Hi, I'm Blood Moon, and this is Jinx the Wolf. Jinx is the very first true toonie style fursuit that I've made, and today's video is going to be going over the making of Jinx. Her story begins back in March, when I revealed to some family friends that I was a furry. Well, a couple days later, I received this picture of their daughter who had made a fursuit out of cardboard. Well, this gave me a great idea. Maybe I should work with her to make a fursuit. And the daughter was totally on board, so that's what we started on, and this is the product that we came up with. My goal was to complete Jinx prior to her first planned convention at the Painted Desert FurCon in Phoenix. I ended up completing Jinx a couple months ahead of schedule, which was great, but at the same time, it gave me plenty of time to ponder whether I made it the right size. Does she have enough ventilation? Will it fit? And will she like it? Overall, it just started being doubt in my mind, but in the end, after seeing her put it on for the very first time, it really made my heart melt, and she fell in love with it. Now, truth be told, this isn't my first attempt at making Jinx, but really, this guy is. This is the original Jinx, and I tried putting a realistic fursuit base and the toonie style together, and I didn't think the two mixed very well. So, in the end, I ended up crushing the original Jinx. Now, before I catch too much hate, the original Jinx had a few problems with the hinges and the jaw, so I ended up feeling it was safer just to crush her. And no joke, it was kind of satisfying and quite relieving. On my second go around with Jinx, I decided to experiment with a new material, at least for me, called TPU. It's a flexible, pliable material. 3D printed head bases are traditionally printed with either PLA or PETG filaments, which is a pretty brittle, hard plastic, which are liable to deform pretty quickly when left in a hot car or something along those lines. So I made my choice and went with TPU, which has a 5 times longer print time over that of PLA, but look at this stuff, it is strong. Having never worked with TPU before, I decided to make a small mock-up of Jinx, really just to see how it really worked and see if the hot glue would even stick to the material. And I was in luck, it did, and it worked beautifully. Part of the mock-up process was determining the shape and the size of the ears, and well, these ended up not passing muster, so I ended up changing them later in the video. I then began carving out some foam to pad out the cheeks of the face. That way, when I put the elastic bands across the back of the head, it would minimize the deformity that would be experienced by the mask. One of the biggest critiques I have on myself is trying to go way too complex with pattern work and stuff like that, where in this case I was trying to get a fade from a dark color to a lighter color on the tip of the ear, but in the end, I start thinking back to my engineering days of keep it simple stupid, or the KISS method. And I really think it added a lot to this project where I ended up just going with a single solid color within the inner ear rather than a lot of different colors. And I just kind of let the textures take over and speak for themselves rather than the colors. Another thing that you see me doing here is going back and forth between the brown and the white, trying to figure out what color was going to be the kind of the base color of the wolf. Was it going to be a white or a brown? But I wanted something in there just to kind of tone down the bright colors of the pink and blue and just kind of bring some balance. I won't lie, sitting here and watching myself go through this discovery process of what works and what doesn't just kind of scares me because, man, Jinx could have gone such a different direction, and I really don't think it would have turned out nearly as beautiful as it did. I think, in the end, Jinx turned out to be really the perfect explanation of who Jinx is as a person. Now that I think I figured out how the furs were going to be layered and what colors I was going to use, I go ahead and start duct tape patterning. That way I can do a quick mock-up and see really how everything starts falling into place or not. I realized I should probably pull up a sketch of Jinx, that way I can transcribe the pattern onto the face. Another thing I kind of laugh at myself about is kind of the sketching process, because traditionally I'm going to sketch things out, and then when I actually start cutting out the pattern, I don't even pay attention to the lines. I just start making modifications then and there and kind of hope for the best at the end. So I think this is probably one of the first ones that actually stuck pretty closely to the pattern, but truly that doesn't happen very often. So this isn't really a how-to video, but in general, what I'm doing here is I took the duct tape pattern off the face and now I'm just transcribing onto the back of the fur. well, if you were to lay it flat, it's going to be doing a mirror image of what you actually intended. So you flip it where the sticky side of the duct tape is facing up. That way when you put it onto the model that you're working on, it's in the correct position. And this is the story of my life with this project. Lots of hand sewing. And here it is, my first look at the mock-up, and so far, I'm thinking it looks alright. And I know this is a furry, but man, this thing's a little bit furry, so I will come back through here in a minute and give her a good shave. Oh, and did I say a good shave? Yeah, I kind of meant a fast shave, because really I just took about 2 or 3 minutes, just knocked off all the big chunks. As I'm shaving it down here, I start seeing a few things I'd like to make adjustments to on the final pattern, where kind of the dots on the cheeks, I'd like to move those forward a little bit more, and the eyebrows, I'd like to make those a little bit smaller. And after some discussions with Jinx, she decided that she'd like to have a star in the middle of the forehead, so that becomes part of the final design later. But one of the most important things I see are the ears. They need to be bigger. I don't think it really took much, but just a slight change that I did really helped accentuate the ears and really just give it a much better shape. So I'm pretty happy I made that change. On top of the reshaping of the ear, I decided to give it a little bit of a ridge and a lip to the ear. That way, it had some more texture and dimension. As I start gluing these ears down, I'm starting to really like the shape of them, and I can definitely see that I made the right choice by just reworking them just the slightest amount. There's so many changes I made to this fursuit than I did on my previous ones, which one of the major things was using elastic on this rather than using like a hard hat harness, which had some benefits, but at the same time there were also some drawbacks, so I decided to give this method a shot, and I liked it enough that I ended up using elastic on my Blood Moon 2.0 build, which I'm really happy with the way it fits. Now the key reason I started putting elastic on at this point was really just because I was going to start mounting the ears and wanted to make sure that I didn't interfere with how they would mount. If you look closely as I mount up the ears, one ear is slightly off of center line, so I end up changing that out later, but I don't think I captured that on video just because it was a slight minor change. And with the ears mounted up, I was sitting pretty happy with the way I was looking, so I called it mock-up complete. One of the things I was pretty adamant about was trying to get a little bit of a poof of fluff kind of at the root of the ear here, kind of at the cheeks. So I created this little ridge where it would just kind of force the fur to crop up a little bit and give a little bit of a fluffiness to the face. And I really like the way these turned out. So I was just making a pair of them and getting the symmetry as best as I could. And then I came along and just gave some refining shape to the ears and took a little bit of a trim to round them out a little bit just so they weren't so blocky overall. And now it was finally time for me to get to the most dreaded part of this project, which was creating a liner for the head. I really didn't want to work in this area because I knew it was going to be tight and cramped, and trying to get the hot glue gun down into these tight crevices I knew was just going to kind of suck. In the end, it wasn't that bad though, and I'm glad I did it because it really helped kind of complete the project. One saving grace I had was, by using this TPU, I was able to manipulate the nose and kind of start pulling on pieces that normally wouldn't be able to move, but by being somewhat flexible, I was able to get the hot glue gun in kind of the mouth and the snout area just by pulling them up and away, and it worked out pretty well. So I kind of worked on getting this liner kind of around the face, and then I came back later and added a back part of the hood and just sewed it onto the face. So all in all, it worked out pretty well. With the lining done, it was time to move on to patterning the face once again, but this time it was gonna be for real. And looking back, now that I've seen the head and kind of the final product, one thing I'd really like to improve on is kind of making that neck just a little bit longer, so I need to work on making a neck pattern for the future, but overall, it still worked out pretty decent. And here it is, it's time to start sketching out the final pattern for Jinx. And this kind of gets a little bit scary because, well, this is what the final thing's gonna be. It's all based upon this, so kind of don't screw it up. This is when I start making some of those changes I discovered that I wanted to make during the mock-up phase, and I was able to move those dots on the cheek forward and get those eyebrows kind of shortened up and a little tighter, and it gave me a little bit more room to throw the star in the middle of the forehead. So all in all, the mock-up I think was a great move. At this point, I'm working on a couple little details on the back of Jinx's ears, which are a pair of hearts that they're not very prominent, but they just added a little bit of spice and flavor to the suit. And with that, I've got most of the ears kind of done. They look a little bit large at the moment, but I think as we start fluffing out the face a little bit, everything just kind of comes into place. And once again, I start the sewing process trying to get that base piece kind of complete and ready for gluing. And all in all, this goes by pretty quick because, well, I've already done half the side once. It's just making it once again. I try to machine sew as much as I can, but small little details like the nose and all the little markings, most of those I try to do really by hand because it just helps ensure that you get the pieces nice and tight and really overall well shaped. And as the project starts coming to an end, I start working on getting the elastic straps finalized and getting that hood in place. Well, final fitment. Everything seems to be working out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with how it works and the visibility is great. Let's do it. And for these final few minutes, I'll go ahead and just shut up and let you guys kind of watch the process as I let it unfold. From the start of Jinx 1.0 to the completion of this current project, it took me about 9 months of work, but I'm beside myself and ecstatic with how she turned out for my very first toonie style fursuit. Is it perfect? Absolutely not, but I'm blown away by how much progress I've made as a fursuit maker in the past year that I've been in the fandom. I personally think that Jinx is my greatest success up to this point. Seeing her side by side with the initial sketch to the final completed project, I'm so happy with how everything came out. So, what do you guys think of Jinx? Should I do more toonie style or should I go with the more realistic fursuits? They're both fun, and I have so many projects in mind for the future. Let me know in the comments what you think my next project should be, and if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, thank you for watching.